Hey, peace and blessings, everybody. It's your brother Sorry back with another one. Um, Peace to the true and living. Who is the true and living? If you're watching this, if y'all been watching any of these videos, y'all know we are the true and living. Nice to meet you. Nice to what I'm saying, be in y'all presence today. Uh, let's see here. Um, on this one, we're gonna go into the 11th and the 12th law of power. I'm gonna kind of consolidate these two laws of power, and then we'll get into the 13th on another video. Kind of rolling through these. Um, yeah. On today is Father's Day, man. I just wanted to kind of give a shout out to all the, all the fathers, all the men out there, stuff like that, who go out there in the world and kind of make it happen. Um, getting the busted knuckles and the calluses on the hands, building the world and stuff like that. Sometimes it feels like a thankless job, but at the end of the day, I appreciate all the, the brothers that have crossed my path and stuff like that and made me a better person. You see what I'm saying? Whether it be, my elder, my peers, or even my younger brothers that you know, uh, give a lot of the older guys motivation to ask their questions and, bring their energy to, the world. It kind of like reinvigorate a lot of us that might be like, whatever, A lot of us, the young cats kind of like spark us again, like make us relook at things and give us new energy and stuff like that. And the elders kind of, give us the wisdom we need and stuff like that. And, my peers, definitely got love for my peers, like, soldiers in the trenches, whatever the world got to throw at us. So iron sharper iron. So for all my brothers out there, all the men out there, happy Father's Day. I appreciate all the, brothers in my life. So that have helped kind of mold me into the individual I am. But much love as far as that's concerned. Now let's get into this 11th and the 11th law of power. Okay, so like how we talked about, when we deal with these laws of power, in a lot of ways they get into some of the manipulative side of things a little bit. You see what I'm saying? Like this law in particular is talking about learn how to keep people dependent on you and everything like that. As it pertains to True Master, we're contrasting this stuff with a lot of stuff from True Master. The stuff in TM is not necessarily designed. Well, I don't pitch it from the manipulative side, but it's like fire. It can cook a meal or can destroy something. So it has that stuff in it. It's all depending on how the person uses it. So I'm not encouraging nobody to manipulate nobody, but there are people who are manipulative out there. So that's just how it is. If you didn't use that, you would use something else to manipulate people. So it really wouldn't matter. So let's see. In the 11th law of power, right? Let's learn to keep people dependent on you. Okay. In True Master, the corollary to that would be becoming a symbol or an archetype. Um, and what I would add to that also is probably evoking scarcity. You see what I'm saying? You created some sort of structure in which you can evoke scarcity on this other person or whatever case may be, and make them kind of dependent on you. There's a system kind of structure that way. So let's see. In this law, there is an emphasis on acquiring some manner of skill that makes people depend on you. So, in a previous law of power, I think the eighth law of power, it talked about, let's see, um, I don't know, the eighth law of power talked about, yeah, in the eighth law of power, we're dealing with making other people come to you. You see what I'm saying? This is a very similar um, law. This is a very similar law in the sense that you're trying to make people depend on you. That's why in True Master, as you're gonna see as we go through a lot of these laws of power and stuff like that, he might have something distinguished into like 3 or 4 different laws or whatever as far as the 48 laws, but they might fit up under the same category as far as True Master is concerned. Like this fits in that same category, becoming a symbol or archetype. You see what I'm saying? You're trying to become some sort of symbol or archetype that's valuable to the other person now, or the other group of people. Now, the difference between this law and the eighth law, in the eighth law, that could have been, it was more of a thing of, yeah, in the eighth law, it could have been a thing of charisma. You see what I'm saying? The eighth law, it could be anything. You know, you could be a pretty girl, and and people just like you, and you got some sort of means of marketing your influence or whatever case may be. You could be, I don't know, you could lift, I don't know, you could juggle 20 apples at one time or whatever, but you got some sort of means of making people come to you with something that's interesting or whatever. It could be pure charisma. It could be something, it could be some completely useless talent or whatever case may be, but it's something that kind of like um appeals to people and it makes them come to you. Okay, with this, so that with that, it could be purely charisma based. Okay, with this particular law, this law will coincide with the eighth law as far as TM is concerned. Both entail becoming a symbol or archetype. In the eighth law, this can be based on charisma alone. However, here there is an emphasis on a particular skill. So in this law, the 11th law, making people depend on you. This is a bit. This is based on a skill. So you actually have to have a viable skill. So the example would be you as an archetype of an architect, and your skill or the pattern of the archetype, because the skill, let's say if I'm a plumber, you see what I'm saying? The plumber would be the archetype. What he does or his function would be his pattern, or in this case, the skill. So it correlates like that. Would be let's see. So the example would be you as an archetype of an architect, and your skill or the pattern of the archetype would be to design and construct buildings. So that would be your value or the reason why you would be deemed valuable. So in this view, you would kind of bring things into the realm of archetypes, and it would be the skill or the thing that that archetype does or whatever that makes that thing relevant. So that's, the 11th law of power. Is still going back into that whole idea of kind of like how we talked about in the eighth law of power, making yourself into an archetype, turning yourself into something that's valuable, or finding out what is relevant to this other person or whatever. So we're gonna go into the, let's see, the 12th law of power, man. Let's see here. Okay, so this is getting more into your deception, right? Still into this deceptive type thing. Okay, the 12th law of power, right? Use selective honesty and generosity to disarm your victim. Okay, so like I always said in True Master, right? Uh, a lot of this stuff, when you get into the laws of power, you might see 4 or 5 different laws or whatever case may be. That's kind of different or whatever case may be. You have little slight differences or whatever. But in True Master, they're gonna fit in a similar category. Those 4 or 5 might fit up under one same umbrella. So in True Master, we back into the idea of slowing down time, but we're gonna add this little caveat to it, right? Slowing down time and stimulus versus noise. All right. So what we mean by that? So use selective honesty and generosity to disarm your victim. So in TM, that would quantify at, that would show up as slowing down time or stimulus versus noise. So really, in a lot of ways, you're gonna see like a lot of the manipulative aspect of the 48 laws of power. um, we're not really coming from a perspective of trying to manipulate people, but what you'll get from just exploring this, you're gonna be able to identify this when somebody tries to do it to you. You're gonna be like, okay, that's what that kind of looks like. So this law attempts to use a person's emotions in order to throw off any potential suspicion of some ulterior motive. So basically, what you got is an ulterior motive, and then you have a person trying to use selective honesty and generosity to disarm that person or whatever case may be. This is stuff that, people do. It's called bait and switch. People, it's a thing. Okay, this is another method of slowing down time, similar to the third law of power. In this law, we add a twist, the feeding of false information into the system, right? So that's the twist. This is where the stimulus versus noise comes from, the feeding of false information into the system. Now, the teaching on stimulus versus noise, as far as True Master, where that comes from, that comes out of sensitivity in martial arts. That comes out of chi sao. or push hands and stuff like that. Sensitivity exercises of that nature. That's how we arrive at stimulus versus noise, because in those exercises, basically, you're the distinguishing valid stimulus from things that make no difference. It's this exact same thing, but it's taken into the context of situations where you can use it more universally, as opposed to us actually touching hands or something of that nature. So in this law, we add a twist of feeding of false information into the system. Okay, so this happens, let's say, like um, in combat or something like that. You know, people may give you a false tale in order for you to respond improperly or to take you off of your game, so that you'll move improperly, so they can take advantage of your position that you move from. You see what I'm saying? False information in the system provokes improper responses to a given stimulus, and thus ensures exploitation. Remember how we've been talking about this 48 laws of power? We dealing a lot with exploitation, the fear of being exploited. You see what I'm saying? All that stuff like that. So false information in the system, that selective honesty and generosity to disarm some manner of victim. False information in the system provokes improper responses to a given stimulus, and thus ensures uh, exploitation. So that false information could be anything. You see what I'm saying? That false information could be, you know what I'm saying, some sort of, let's say if I got a group of people that's, you know what I'm saying, maybe doing operations or something like that, you know what I'm saying, trying to free victims of human trafficking or something, or trying to shut down some sort of drug rings or something around the country. And then you know, that false um, information in the system. Let's say I have some sort of protest around the same time that these guys are doing this type of stuff. You know what I'm saying? So now I can kind of, like, you know, kind of disrupt their efforts in law enforcement under the guise of a protest, something of that nature. But anyway, in the context of stimulus versus noise, a true master stimulus is something you can't not respond to without consequences. So stimulus is something that you can't not respond to without consequences. Noise is something that won't affect you whether you respond to it or not. Right? Okay, so in this context, the false information in the system would be noise, right? The actual stimulus would be the hidden agenda in the background. So if a person got a hidden agenda, and you know what I'm saying, they kind of like, hey man, you know what I'm saying, they kind of trying to look at this over here, look at this over here, and they trying to steal your sofa. You know what I'm saying? They telling you to look at this over here, whatever case may be. This would be the noise. The man walking out the door with your sofa would be the actual stimulus. So in True Master, whether it's generosity or whether it's whatever it is, it's only another type of noise. You see what I'm saying? The actual punchline is a stimulus. Everything else is just another type of noise. It's just a distraction. Okay, let's see here. Stimulus versus noise requires a level of sensitivity, as the actual stimulus may not be so obvious, and it may be saturated with noise. The situation may be saturated with noise. There may be all kind of things going on, multiple things going on, or whatever case may be. But the thing you need to pay attention to is this little sliver right here. And if you deviate, you're gonna miss the opportunity, or you're gonna miss what you're trying to do, or you're gonna miss what's actually happening to you. You see what I'm saying? Okay, let's see. On the other side, to try to generate noise. To try to generate noise. So let's say on the other side, you're trying to generate noise in an attempt to provoke an improper response to a stimulus and everything like that. Let's see. Okay, so I'm gonna just give an example of this. This is something that happens. You know what I'm saying? It's Father's Day, so this is just, I'm gonna give a relatable example that men can relate, that maybe men can relate to. Women can relate to it too, because it's gonna, you know, it's one of the things. This is a human example, you know. Okay, so an example. Okay, let's say your girl wants to go out somewhere. Say she want to go out somewhere, do something that you may not necessarily approve of, and she know you probably gonna say no or disagree with or whatever. She want to go out somewhere, but you want her to be around you for whatever reason. You know what I'm saying? How, whatever the reason is. She might introduce false information into the scenario. Yeah, I mean, she might introduce false information in stereo. Ladies, when y'all do this, this is an example of what I'm talking about. So she might introduce false um, information into the scenario, i.e., start an argument about something from 5 months ago. Noise. In this scenario, that's the noise. She might start an argument with you about something from 5 months ago that she could care less about. You know what I'm saying? But the argument is a distraction. Just so you respond improperly, which is, you know what I'm saying, I'm finna get my stuff and go, or whatever case may be. And it gives her just enough space and opportunity to go out on that girl's trip. Or you mad for Tyrone gonna be mad for the next 3 days. You know what I'm saying? I can go to the club, I can go do whatever it is that I'm trying to do, or whatever case may be. So that's an example of what we're talking about. So in TM, that's stimulus versus noise. Now it don't have to be it can be an argument, or it can be like they're talking about in this law of power, generosity, false honesty, or something to butter somebody up or whatever. But either way, this is noise. It's similar to what we were talking about in the third law of power, concealment of intentions. That's convoluting, that's slowing down somebody's awareness. If the pattern was to go from unaware to aware, you're slowing down that timing. You're clouding up, you're delaying awareness of that. You see what I'm saying? Okay, so in this law of power, we are discussing using generosity and selective honesty. However, in the contrast provided by True Master, we view generosity and selective honesty is just another type of noise. It's just another type of noise. You clouding up the person's awareness of what's really going on, or whatever case may be. Whether you making them slip on a banana peel, whether you smiling at them, whether it's a pretty girl across the street that's smiling at them and waving or whatever, while the dude behind them take their wallet. It's the same thing. You see what I'm saying? Noise is noise. So the true intent will follow the principles the person is governed by, such as in law number 8. Let's see here. When we spoke of bait, when we talked about bait, you have to understand like what that person actually cares about. You see what I'm saying? In order to have a bargaining chip, or to draw them to you, or whatever case may be, you have to even understand what that person even is concerned about, and finding what principles a person is loyal to distinguish what they actually care about. So in other words, if you see red flags, um, and you ignore them, then those red flags are potentially fractals of larger potential situations and everything like that, right? Yeah, and a lot of times when you see red flags initially, they're telling you who they are and what that's a window into who that person is, what they care about, how they deal with situations and stuff like that. That's a fractal into maybe potentially a larger, more involving situation later. So yeah, and we also want to talk about probably in the next video how if the actions don't match the principles at play, then you're probably dealing with some form of ulterior motive. You see what I'm saying? Like if I'm out, I know it's going some people gonna be set off by this. I really don't care, but you got people with a Mexican flag in America, but you're trying to stay in America, but you got the flag of another country that you're leaving, that you don't want to go back, but you waving that flag, but you in this country and you're trying to stay here. See, the reason why people are so puzzled by that is because the principles at play don't match the person's action. Because if I'm trying to stay over here, or whatever case may be, I don't want to be where I'm at. I'm trying to come over here, or whatever case may be. I'm fleeing or whatever for political asylum. My actions are not matching a person fleeing for political asylum. So thus, a logical minded person would say, hey man, somebody's paying for this and this ain't an organic thing that's going on. This is some sort of ulterior motive. But that's just a modern day example of that law of power. But that's the 11th and 12th law, man. We're going to get into the 13th law in the next video. But appreciate y'all for checking me out, man. Y'all stay tuned, man. Peace and blessings, man. Peace and love, man.